This is the Distinctly Detroit podcast, the only pod that explores why one wants to be in the D. I am your host, Fyodor III, the director of the University of Michigan Detroit Center. Join me as I interview students, scholars, leaders, and innovators about living, working, and loving in Detroit. On today's episode of the DDP, we have a U of M alumnus that graduated with a bachelor's degree in engineering and went on to get a master's degree in both engineering and architecture. He was born in the Dominican Republic, but grew up here in Detroit. He is currently the lead superintendent on the Michigan Central Depot project. And the DDP welcomes Manuel Martinez Jr. Welcome, man. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Correction, little correction there.
Yes.
Is this project superintendent, so I work in conjointly with a senior superintendent, because I think last time I had a little bit of miscommunication on specifically saying the lead superintendent.
Okay.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, we're going to clarify some of that, all of that. But your family is originally from the Dominican Republic. What prompted your move to the United States?
My parents looking for a better future for me and my sisters. As a parent, I'm blessed to have the parents that I have, because my dad had a good career in the Dominican Republic. He was an optometrist. My mother was an accountant, but the education system in the Dominican Republic is not what it is here in the United States. So my parents, they saw that at a very early age. My dad went to high school in New York. So he saw the gaps, and he started to really quickly analyze and, say, this isn't gonna be the place where I'm gonna raise my kids. Because I lived in a pretty rough neighborhood in the Dominican Republic. So when people say, oh yeah, Detroit's bad, I'm like, no, I love Detroit. And that more or less was what initiated the process of my parents wanting to come to the United States. And on our end, for me and my sisters, that's the big burden, is making sure that my parents left everything they have back at home. We left all our families for us to get a better education. So I gotta make sure I'm giving that to my parents, 110%.
Oh, most definitely. How old were you when you made the move?
10 years old. We moved to Detroit. Funny story, one of my uncles was the individual who told my parents, hey, there's a lot of work here. My parents moved to Detroit, and within, maybe a year, my uncle moved to Miami. Most of my family lives in Miami. So me and the old hat trick.
Yeah.
But yeah, they came to Detroit specifically because of the job opportunities. And we came specifically to Detroit because my dad literally jumped the gun and just bought a house before we all moved here. And he was that committed to saying, I know what I want. We're moving to the United States. And bought the house, did everything he had to do on his end, and here we are to this day.
So what was the transition like coming from DR here to Detroit?
That's a great question. I grew up with a lot of 80s music because that was how I learned English.
Okay.
I had no English classes growing up in the Dominican Republic. So the transition for me was initially very difficult. Traditionally, every weekend, my family, Saturdays go to the beach. I grew up surfing. Go to the beach, have fun out there. Sundays, family time, go to my grandma's house. So moving away from all that, when you're used to doing it every single weekend, became extremely tough. So leaving that for me at first was kind of like, I don't want to be here. And then over time, as I started to have friends here, I played baseball. I don't know if that's just a typical Dominican thing. Playing baseball, I started meeting a lot of friends here, and everything just started to fall in place in terms of feeling comfort outside of what I'm usually comfortable with, which goes to say, you know, sometimes the most uncomfortable experiences makes for the best over time. And I feel like that was my barrier. And as soon as I started to feel like this is home now, that more or less is what got me, you know what, just adapt, learn English, start singing 80 songs and start trying to perfect the language. And that was more or less that transition process for me. Was moving here, getting the language barrier, and the friends and the family. And as soon as I got comfortable with it, it's just focusing on the one thing, which is education.
How often do you get back to the DR?
I normally would travel back. So growing up, we just came here for education initially. And then every summer we'd go back to the Dominican Republic. Me and my sisters, my parents worked. Both of them have always been very hard workers, 2 jobs. And then it wasn't until college, my first year of college, that, you know, I started getting internships, I started getting work, or started working. And that's where I just stopped for like 8 years. And then it wasn't until I graduated that I was able to go back to the Dominican Republic. And spending that much time not going back hurt a lot, mainly because, you know, you start, the cousins that you grew up with, you start becoming a bit distant from them. And my biggest thing was I've always been very close to my grandparents. So that's where, you know, for me, I made it a goal to make sure that I go back home as often as possible. Once a year nowadays.
Okay.
My goal.
Okay. So as you got here, you made the transition. How did you find the school system here in Detroit or in the U.S.? How were the schools different?
Yeah, so education overall, very interesting because in the Dominican Republic, the education system, very, very different. At noon, everyone breaks, everyone goes home and goes out to, you know, back home, back to your home, to your house to eat. And then 2 hours later, you go back to school. So in terms of the things we did that were uncommon here, that didn't felt a little weird. But in terms of the education itself, what you're learning, how you're processing information, if you're not a visual learner, you know, or a reader, how do you get that information transferred over so that you can comprehend? Not knowing English and coming to the United States, the piece that I found is that the United States, at least Detroit Public School at the time, I went to the Academy of Americas, and I feel that they did an amazing job because I had a class. Unfortunately, it was my recess time that got sacrificed.
Okay.
But I had a class where every day I go to this class and I read for an instructor or a teacher, and that alone was that one-on-one time I needed to be able to start picking up and getting motivated to learn English and to start, you know, that transition from Spanish to English. In terms of the other courses that education has, you know, I went to middle school here, did high school here, so the comparison, I wouldn't be able to speak to that because, you know, here at DPS school, I feel like it was challenging, and I saw that when I got to college, but being able to understand that you have work to do and that others may have may have more education than you do, I mean, that's no barrier that stops you from getting to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
So, hope I answered that one. That was kind of a long stretch.
That was great. That was great. So, what influenced you to choose the University of Michigan for college?
It was actually in this building. God bless his soul, Mr. Winfrey. Pulled me aside, Mr. Tyrone Winfrey, the man, the myth, the legend, and forever an individual who will live in the heart of many of us. He changed my life overnight, truthfully. I had no plans, and it's crazy and it sounds kind of like hypocritical in a way because we came here for education, but once I got to high school, I had no intentions of going to college. And Mr. Winfrey pulled me aside one day. He saw me here, and he literally, "Hey, young man, come over here." And there was an event for high school graduates that got accepted to the University of Michigan. He sat me at that event, and that was the very first experience that I had, with individuals that are as young as I was, having the next steps of life kind of planned out. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, I don't even know what it is that I really want to do. I just had joining the military was one of the things that I had in mind, or what most individuals in my community did, which is we just start working, help the parents out with the bills, start our families, and make it a habit every day. Just wake up and go to work. So that is the reason as to why I started transitioning and started telling myself, you know what, college is going to be that next step, because Mr. Winfrey, he believed in me. He saw something I didn't see in myself, and he pushed and pushed and pushed me to the point where he's like, so you're gonna apply to Michigan. I always did very well in school. I always had 4.0s or 3.9s, depends which grade, right? But I was always up there in school, and if it wasn't because of him, I don't think I ever would have took that leap of faith and applied. And as soon as I got in, I knew I had a lot of work to do. Go blue.
So then you got in. How did you come to choose engineering?
Very practical, always loved numbers. Architecture as well. Back in the Dominican Republic, I was in a art school. So this ties back to the background of what the Dominican Republic was for me. You're either growing up in the streets, being a knucklehead, or you get to do things that keep you away from the streets. And my parents always tried to keep us busy outside of not being out, and we were young, we were kids, but they wanted to minimize the exposure to what that was and put us more on anything that brings any type of, a skill or anything that you can use versus being out and doing nothing all day. So I always loved design. So when I got to the University of Michigan, I knew that I was more or less going to aim for a degree such as engineering or architecture. And it's crazy because not once did I think that's what I wanted to do. In terms of planning it out, I think that senior year, Mr. Winfrey said, you gotta go in with a game plan. You can't just go in there, be in there for 5-6 years. You gotta go in there with a game plan. And when I sat down, that's more or less what helped me say, you know what, this is my game plan. This is what I'm gonna go for. And if it's a challenging road, so be it, but this is what I'm gonna aim for.
So you did undergrad in both engineering and architecture, or you did undergrad in just engineering and then did the master's in architecture.
I did my undergrad in just architecture.
Oh, in architecture.
Yeah, I had a good friend of mine who, also by the name of Manny. I saw him designing a 3D model once, and for whatever reason, I fell in love with that. I said, I want to do that. And I don't know, I have this weird thing about me. It's like I see something that I really like that I would say, you know, I would really enjoy, or I see myself doing that, and I just do it. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you believe or you enjoy something, why not? Just go for it.
Okay, so you got your bachelor's in architecture, and then you went to grad school for engineering and architecture.
Correct.
Joint masters.
Yep.
Okay, so you got 3 degrees from U of M.
That's right.
In some of the toughest programs and areas. So you got your master's degree. What was your first job after you finished your master's?
I was an intern for the University of Michigan, AEC, which was I was part of the hospital team. And
architecture, engineering, and construction.
correct. So it was the construction team, well, architecture, engineering, and construction. I was part of the construction team building out hospitals. That's how I got exposed to construction.
Okay.
So I more or less was aiming towards engineering side of things. But as an intern with the University of Michigan, I was exposed. I mean, I had an individual, Ken Silverman and TJ. They took me under their wing, and they more or less like taught me what construction looks like on a very complex scale, because to build a hospital, I mean, it's very challenging. And it was a new language. So the cool thing behind it was, in architecture, I learned how to make plans. Engineering, you can see some of the components, it kind of breaks it down by materials and things like that. But then the construction side of things, you can actually get an overall understanding of how everything comes together to build it, so that now this 2D concept that you want to, me to build, now I bring it to life. And then the cool experience is to actually walk it and see that what was here on this sheet of paper is now this. So that was my first experience. And then right after that, I started working with the Chrisman Company, which that opened up millions of opportunities. Chrisman Company, right now, we're conjointly with Chrisman Brinker. And this is me jumping the gun on some of the work experience. But what opened up a lot of opportunities is I was working for a project in Cuba. So
that's what I was leading to.
This an amazing. I mean, this project alone was the best thing that has ever happened to me, and will forever be my favorite project. So my very first official job, not as an intern, I started working with the Chrisman Company. And that came about, the Chrisman Company was working on one of the projects at U of M, and I heard nothing but great things about this company. Has a very good, rich culture. All the employees, it's almost like we're a family. Love it. So with that, I was given the opportunity to work on a project in Cuba. Given that I speak Spanish, it would help the project out. And then the best part about it was that project was so much of a high-profile project that individuals working on this project, Ron Staley, one of our VPs, Mary Jo Adams, our Think of a Year client, and Bill DuPont, the team leader, architect out of UTSA. I was 110% fortunate to be surrounded by these individuals, because individuals that are experts in their fields, when you surround yourself with that, it puts you kind of like in that same, well, I wouldn't say the same, but it it makes you think a lot more on an issue and how to be a problem solver. So instead of just bringing issues, I was learning how to problem solve with individuals like this. And this project was the biggest challenge I've ever experienced, because in Cuba, you don't have a Home Depot. You don't just go to the warehouse, say, hey, let me get a 2x4, let me get this screw that goes in this specific. You don't have that. So we were building a preservation lab in Cuba for the Ernest Hemingway Museum. And we assembled and did the entire build out here in the United States. Where my experience came with architecture was that I was also able to get some of the drawings and make it convert very basic stuff, but convert all the metrics to what we use to then send everything out for bid. And then we did prefab, assembled everything in warehouses, and then dismantle, label every single piece, and then ship it to Cuba. Things with that is that you have zero room for mistakes. So given that I was surrounded by individuals that are very knowledgeable, and then I was given the opportunity to be part of this project, to help out, and then it turned into, almost sad to say, but an obsession where I just love this project, and I would try to find ways to see how we can improve, how we can do something better. As a team, you know, it wasn't just myself, of course, but that gave me the opportunity. Ron, my great mentor, basically had the trust in me and said, you know what, this individual is capable of doing this at a very young age, and let me roll with the project. And from there, it was kind of like, all right, let's do this. And that alone opened up a lot of doors, and a lot of trust was built with what I'm capable of, and me just trying to show what I'm capable of.
So just, what was Cuba like?
Cuba, amazing experience overall. I never discuss any type of politics, but very, very different from the States. A lot of hardships, but all in all, rich culture, amazing people. Getting out there, we had a lot of challenges because construction here and construction in Latin America is very, very different. You know, OSHA would literally have a heart attack. In Cuba, we had a lot of challenges with our team, or not challenges, but more or less opportunities to try and come up with ideas on how we can continue the construction at a good pace. And those were some of the things that we were able to brainstorm. And we had, I mean, it was amazing. Again, the team that I was with, very knowledgeable, and the opportunity to bring a team from the US and train a lot of Cuban skill trades that you don't, I mean, Cuba hasn't done any type of, or the US hasn't done any type of construction since the embargo, 1962. So to bring in individuals from the US to train Cubans how to build and how to, give them tools, the skill trades, that alone was just phenomenal. Yeah. And till this day, I always pray a lot, but I was blessed to be part of that project. Yep.
I asked about Cuba. I mean, it's a place I want to go. The U.S. keeps changing the policy and making it easier, harder to go. But I just heard it's kind of like frozen in time, like the cars. You said, the cars are older, and technology.
Yep.
It's really beautiful, the architecture.
If you go, you definitely have to give me a call.
Okay.
Cars, if you love any historic cars, Cuba is the only place that you first want to visit? You know, there may be others,
Yeah.
but the number one on your list should be Cuba. Architecture, same thing. It's known or seen as international architecture, but that international architecture, the style, it's just beautiful because it has a language, it shows a story. The decay on some of the buildings and how they're restoring and bringing them back up, it's just, you can see some of the transitions where you walk through neighborhoods and you can see one area, it's very deteriorated, and on the right side, you have a beautiful hotel that's catering, you know, a lot of the tours, so you can see that they're very skilled in construction and bringing things back to life. And yet, you also see the history and all else happening in Cuba. So, mix of realism.
And the dichotomy between the spaces.
Correct.
Yeah, that's probably really strange to see, but one day I'm gonna get there. So now you are involved in a major project here in Detroit, working on a historic building. You're involved in the redevelopment of the old train station, or train depot as they call it. I can never remember it. It seems like they're always changing the name.
Correct.
But tell me about that project and, you know, kind of what you're doing, how you're involved in that.
So I'm going to take a couple steps back before I answer that. The year I graduated from undergrad, back in 2012, I gave a friend of mine a phone call, and I said, hey, I want to go back to Detroit. I want to rebuild Detroit. And at the time, Detroit was already having a lot of investors. Things started to happen in Detroit. And with that, it's just been engraved in my head. Like, I want to be part of, because my nieces and my nephews live here. My parents live here, my sisters. So for me, it's not just for me. This is for the next generation. And you know, I've been to beautiful places in Miami. I've been to beautiful places throughout the world. And Detroit has the opportunity to be that and more. So now, moving forward to the present, given the opportunity to work on a major project like the train station is literally, to say the least, a dream come true. The train station itself is a beautiful historic icon that we will make sure lives for generations to come. The way we are rebuilding it for an amazing client, we're putting the team that worked there are top notch. Great team to work with on a daily basis. My role specifically is a project superintendent, and on a daily basis, my do's and don'ts are basically ensuring that we go over a schedule, we're hitting our target dates, quality control, ensuring that, you know, everyone is doing everything that we're more or less contracted to, and doing it safe. You know, it's the best part behind it all is that we all leave home and we say goodbye to our loved ones, and making sure that we get back home in that same form we left. It's very important, and I take safety on the job site very serious. But then going back to the project itself, you know, once...
Just want to jump in right there. For our listeners who may not know, you mentioned you're doing the work for a great client. Can you give a little bit more of a broader overview of what the project, who the client is, what the project, you know, who was it for?
Yeah, so this is for Ford. Ford purchased the building in 2018. And since 1988, the building was vacant. A building that sits vacant for 30 years, and just weather hitting every angle of it, you can see how tall the building sits on its site. So heavy winds, water spraying through everywhere. So there is a lot of deterioration. So the client made a great investment, to say the least, because the building does need a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's an iconic building that represents Detroit, you know. So I don't know. It's one of those things where since the day it opened, 1913, it opened up about a year early because the train depot at the time caught fire. So this train station opened up, and from the moment it opened up, it was a go, go, go. So during the World War II, the average amount of people through there was about 4,000. So in terms of pedestrian level, a lot of people, just heavy traffic. So this building, for a lot of individuals, great thing is every time we have individuals that are older and that go visit, they talk about their experience there. They're like, yeah, I remember my dad or my grandpa living here. I was a tiny kid. So in terms of Ford purchasing this property and building it, I think I know exactly, you know, they know what they're doing, and they are committed to Detroiters, because to bring a building with such decay back to life, you know, you have to have love for the city. You have to have love for that community to be able to bring it back to life. So
That's dope. And when is the project expected to be completed?
that's I don't think I can disclose a lot of that information.
Okay.
But there's different stages.
It's on time.
Yeah, right now the project is going very well, actually. It's just different stages, and we are getting ready to hit our first stage, but coming soon.
So you mentioned that you wanted to rebuild Detroit. So what is kind of a potential dream project for you? Or what is something out there that you really want to do, or, you know, down the road, or something you want to do for yourself, or something you really want to do big for the community?
Oh, that's an amazing question. For the community, so I have different sets of goals that I set for myself, right? For career goals, personal goals, and my personal goals more or less also align with who I want to be in a few years. And my goal is to try and begin to be more involved with the city on different boards, such as the educational board. I initiated that process with Mr. Winfrey. And the overall objective is to make sure that the next generation is just getting everything we can give them. So specifically for me to sit here and tell you, hey, you know, this is what I have in mind. There's no just one thing in mind other than being active in the city, to be able to help in every way that I can. You know, the first few years is always being a sponge. You absorb as much information as you can. I am now seeing that I'm becoming, you know, I can't really say an expert, but I'm becoming a lot more knowledgeable in my field. So I have information, and I can share information on how to do things, how to, you know, save money on specific projects, because I do this for a living now. So
Some people call that expertise.
Correct. Yeah. So that's actually my overall goal, is making sure that I can help the city with what I've been learning for the past few years. And then it kind of aligns with my personal goal. I've been purchasing properties, and it's more or less to keep rebuilding Detroit. You know, it's not a big building that's going to make a family happy. It's also the homes that you built for the Detroiters that allow us to be here, allow us to, you know, have our cousins, our moms, our uncles nearby, you know, because that's another big thing that's been happening is a lot of renovations on the homes and making sure that we keep Detroiters here in Detroit, you know.
Okay, that's cool. So, as you say that, what do you see as some of the big opportunities and challenges for Detroiters or for the city or people who want to help rebuild and give back? What do you see out there in the community, in the city for people?
I'm a big believer in one, awareness. So being able to, and this goes for all of those that are in a position that could, you know, such as your platform. This is an amazing opportunity for the youth to be able to hear out what's out there. Create awareness is step number one, because once you create awareness, you give the youth options on different things that they can do for their future, right? Second one is using your resources. I mean, the internet, you can learn anything you want. And I say that specifically because you don't have to be a Detroiter to know that if you want to learn about development or you want to learn about finance, you want to learn just about everything, you can go on the internet and learn that. So with that, Detroiters have this beautiful program, the Land Bank. Detroiters have the opportunity to buy homes here in the city at a very cheap price. Of course, you know, you have to put in a bit of work, a bit of hours, and some personal money on it, but at the end of the day is you can learn how to purchase your own home. You can learn how to do something, carpentry, and work on your own house. And you can also learn how to go through the process, rent it out. Now you're making an additional income. And at the end of the day, using your resources, everything is all there for you. And that's just one bubble, you know, and you have a million more to go. And as Detroiters, I think that we have the resources. A lot of investors are investing in Detroit, in Detroiters. For high school students, so many scholarships and opportunities are out there. You just have to get online, look for them. And for us that have the opportunity to look back and say, bring awareness. Let the youth know what's out there.
We're going to transition now to what we call our lightning round.
All right.
This is an area where we ask all our guests the same questions, and this is more about your experiences in and around the city, or you know, your views of Detroit. And the first question is, what is your Coney order?
Oh, my Coney is usually wingdings, 9-piece. I love it with ketchup, and depending on the day, I also get chili cheese fries with it.
Okay. Verner's or Fago?
Fago. Great Fago.
Okay. Who is your favorite Detroit athlete?
Some people are gonna hate me, but go blue. Hutchinson right now is just killing the game. Yeah.
Okay.
Hutchinson.
Okay. Double homer, but I like it. Okay. Better made or Lay's chips?
Blaze. Sorry, I know, my bad.
Deep dish or pan style pizza?
Buttermade barbecue would be over everything else.
So deep dish or pan pizza?
Given that I have a lot of New York in my background with my parents and whatnot, I'd say, yeah, the pan. Yeah.
That's that New York piece. Okay. Favorite Motown artist? Or favorite artist from Detroit?
Oh my God. Can't even start that one. Hey, you would hear the typical Michael Jackson, but Temptations, the Supremes, I love them. Yeah, I can go on all day on that one.
Okay. Favorite place to go in the city?
The Quindercut and the River Walk are my place of thoughts. So those are the places where I go, I walk, I sit, and I think. So those, I'll say the River Walk.
Favorite Detroit sports team?
I love baseball, but this year's Lions are doing great. Red Wings are amazing. And the winner goes to the Tigers.
Okay. Tiger. And last question we have, where can we find you?
Online, Manuel Martinez. I'm not a huge social media individual, but I do have a Facebook and Instagram. And coming soon, hopefully, my own LLC. We'll see. So you'll be hearing a lot more in the next 10 years. Stay tuned. Manuel Martinez is going to be a name ringing bells around Detroit.
Okay. And we got him here first, ladies and gentlemen. So when he's big time, when we begging him to come back, you know, he can go through the archives and he was here. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Manny Martinez Jr. Shout out to Manny Martinez Sr.
Amen.
We love that guy. Great shout out to Tyrone Winfrey's family. And that was a great man, and we enjoyed working with him and all the work he did. And we're seeing the fruits of his labor every day. This has been the Distinctly Detroit podcast. We thank you for listening. Please like, rate, share, listen. Get us anywhere you can get your pods.
May I say one last thing? Shout out to my wife, Mirangeli. Beautiful, babe, I love you. She is the buzz. She is the reason why I stay motivated and I stay pushing every day. And my parents, of course.
All right. So again, get us anywhere you get your pods. We also want to say thank you to Slows Barbecue for their continued sponsorship and support. You can go to Slows on Michigan Avenue to their sit-down restaurant, or go to their to-go restaurant on Cass Avenue. And thank you for listening. And until next time, I'm Fiona Ship, your host, and we appreciate you all. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Distinctly Detroit podcast. This is a production of the University of Michigan Detroit Center, and you can find us anywhere you get your pods. Please rate, review, and subscribe. This podcast is directed and produced by Marlon Franklin, edited by Taylor Henniger, with writing contributions by James Neely and Leah Allen. Thank you for listening.